Hi, I'm Kylie. Today's video is Israeli urban warfare from vicenews. Now, I've not seen this video yet, but vicenews has some awesome videos. You should really go check their channel out. Let's get to it.
So we're in a huge Israeli training facility called sayeret, and this facility is basically designed to help people learn how to deal with urban combat based on the schematics of Gaza. If you've ever watched a kind of dystopian sci-fi movie, you'll know that the future of the planet is basically one enormous city. And that's why urban warfare is so en vogue. Wars are no longer going to be held across large plains with two armies approaching. It's going to be sporadic, and it's going to be in complicated, scary urban situations.
As warfare moves into urban settings, conventional armies have struggled as insurgent forces utilize the density and irregularities of the city as a defensive terrain. After all, a traditional army can't march through tiny streets, and as such, much of their battlefield power is negated. In Israel, conflict is an almost everyday occurrence. Battles with enemies like Hezbollah and Hamas were fought along the lines of traditional military combat with heavy casualties on both sides. That was until the Second Intifada in 2002, where Israelis fought in Nablus, redefining the very battlefield of war by using urban warfare combat techniques to take the city. The Israeli military, rather than using the streets, where troops are vulnerable to guerrilla tactics, did something much more surreal and superhuman. They began to walk through walls. Marked by a low number of Israeli casualties, this postmodern approach to urban warfare was heralded as a great success and embraced by Israeli military planners, but the combat resulted in very public civilian casualties and immense collateral damage.
So their CQB or MOUT strategy was, instead of clearing room by room, building by building, we're just going to take out the walls and the buildings. Yes, there'll be more civilian casualties and a lot of collateral damage, but that's going to save the lives of our IDF. So let's see if they talk some more about this.
Trained soldiers in the fundamentals of urban warfare, Israel broke ground in 2005 on the Urban Warfare Training Center in sayeret. Built with labor and significant funding from the US military, the $45 million facility is one of the largest and most technologically advanced of its kind in the world.
Not surprised the US helped with some of that.
This might look like an Arab town, but it's not. It's built by the Israeli Defense Force in order to make sure that their troops are the best urban fighters in the world.
At some of the bigger training posts, the U.S. Army and Marines also have some of these mock-up villages. You'll find one probably at NTC or JRTC. I mean, yes, these are very effective tools, and they also have real-life actors who are playing the roles of the injured or of the insurgents or of just civilians even. It's very realistic training, and I'm thinking it's going to be about the same as we see here.
Modern warfare doesn't take place in open fields like it used to be, and we realized that we have to change the scenery that we train in.
Do you have a fake name for this town?
Yeah, it's called Baladia.
Baladia.
Yeah, which means like city in Arabic. So it's a real city with street lights and everything.
This is the mosque in Baladia, your fake city?
Yeah.
And unlike a mosque in Gaza, I guess we can go in. Right?
Yeah, sure.
Okay. Wow.
Yeah.
It's huge.
600 houses.
Wow.
Square kilometer in size. We're trying to make the city even feel like the city life and everything. We use the mosques to call the praise for 5 times a day for the daily praise. We gotta practice as real as we can get, as we'll see that in real action.
Baladia spans nearly 5,000 acres, with all of the basic structures and amenities of a town. With the help of simulation experts, the chameleon city mimics locations in Lebanon, Gaza, the West Bank, or Syria, depending on the day. Here, the Israeli military practice and hone the latest techniques of urban warfare.
I think this urban mock-up training facility is bigger than any one I've seen in the US. So, yeah, this is impressive.
This is weird. We're basically standing in the middle of a gunfight.
Yeah, pretty much. Right now, they're just facing the first few squads of the enemy. So try to booby trap some of the houses and...
What are the booby traps? Do you mean just snipers waiting, or
no,
bombs, or
bombs
in cars?
Lots of bombs,
IDs.
snipers. That sort of thing we didn't find in modern armies, so we have to be updated all the time, because if we won't do that, we won't win the battle.
Training is vital. Israel may have gained the upper hand utilizing urban warfare techniques in Nablus in 2002, but it was Hezbollah during the 2006 Lebanon war that proved to be better trained, as they seized the advantage in villages and urban areas.
It's about half a mile between here and the town. They've got to make sure there's absolutely no enemy combatants en route. So slowly but surely, they're running forwards, clearing the area, and then they're going to end up in the middle of a city, running up and down stairs, blowing up walls, and generally shitting themselves. What these guys are going through is effectively the future of warfare. Less and less are there going to be regular wars with two armies facing off against one another. Instead, it's going to be small squads storming cities and facing unseen enemies. Right, let's go.
Just like Fallujah in the Battle of Marari, too.
We were just coming over, and the snipers started taking pot shots at us, so we had to dive into this trench. I'm not sure I'd fancy my chances of taking a city after running across this fucking desert.
He's not even wearing all the gear, and he's out of breath.
So they've made it up to the town borders. The next step is getting in without getting shot. Okay, so the most important thing they're doing here is they're avoiding the streets. If you were in Gaza, all the streets would be booby-trapped, there'd be snipers everywhere. What you've got to do is basically make tunnels through the buildings. You've got to go through walls, over walls. You've got to break through into people's living rooms, bust their way through there. It's strange, it's where the private space suddenly becomes public space. It becomes the theater of war. So they discovered that there's a terrorist outside, so they're securing the building. So they've shut all the doors, they've got all the windows covered, and everyone's freaking out a bit.
You have to be really sharp, because everything is a threat. A window is a threat, stairs are a threat, the rooftop is a threat.
So down there you can see the main road. It's the most dangerous place for these guys because there's no cover whatsoever. They're making their way from building to building, always avoiding open spaces. And that's going to be the reality of the future. You've got to avoid the streets, otherwise you're going to be shot by a sniper. So the objective today was to capture this guy back here in the T-shirt, and he was playing the baddie. So they charged in, he started letting off some rounds, but then neutralized him.
Urban warfare is actually the basic thing that we train for these days in the IDF. We see that most democratic countries not fight against each other, but against terrorist groups. Unfortunately, we have lots of experience, but we would prefer to gain most of our experience in training, not in fighting, obviously. But I think NATO and the US Army gained a lot of experience in the last few years in Afghanistan and Iraq, which is pretty similar. It's a change that will affect the entire Western world to build more facilities in order to prepare ourselves for the next war.
The challenges are endless.
To put this into perspective, this video was filmed in 2014, so yes, we were still involved in Afghanistan and in Iraq.
I mean, the danger is endless. 15 years ago, 10 years ago, the urban fighting would be only for special units, but now it's come to day-to-day training. That's our biggest mission. It's wherever we go, whether it's Lebanon, if we go to Gaza, if it's to the West Bank, wherever we go, it's urban fighting. I've been here 3 or 4 times, and every time I've had there's been an army from a different country coming to train over here. I've seen the Marines, I've seen the UN training here. I mean, militaries from all over the world come and train here. The second you go into urban fighting, you just go into a wall. There are people above you. So you've got people above you, people behind you, people on the side. A person can be a meter away from you, and you won't know that he exists. So the danger and the challenges come from every single degree. What would you do if you go into a house and there's a woman there and she says that she's by herself and you have to go and you know that there's a bomb there? What do? Do you shoot? Do you not shoot? It's something we look to prevent in any case and in every price. But the one thing we have is to protect our lives. We as soldiers have a mission to protect our country and protect ourselves and to fight with anyone who's willing to come up against us. As long as they progress, we have to progress, and if we progress, they have to progress. And I'm 100% sure that all the other armies and all the other terrorist organizations that we fight against are progressing, and therefore our tactics are also changing. So I think the progression will never stop.
Even with a new training facility and greater focus on urban combat, Israel might not be able to get the drop on its future opponents. As Israelis train in sayeret, Hezbollah continues to fight alongside the government in Syria, undoubtedly developing and learning new urban warfare tactics. How the IDF's training in simulated villages will measure up to Hezbollah's real-world experience is a big question. But what's certain is that urban warfare will continue to mutate and evolve in a response and counter-response cycle with no foreseeable end in sight.
In case you were wondering why they have these little tactical chef's hat they put on their Kevlars, it's called a mitznefet, and the purpose is to break up their silhouette and to help them camouflage better. I find it very interesting to see that the IDF trains just like the United States with these simulated urban environments. I think it is very important that we do continue this kind of training because, as he said, urban warfare is the future. The United States has learned its lesson from battles such as Mogadishu, Fallujah, Ramadi. Philippines has learned this lesson from the Battle of Morari. India has learned this from Kashmir. And that's why training is so geared toward this kind of warfare. As tough and as hard as urban warfare is, it is the future. But it certainly beats a future where a war is just defined by a press of a button. If you enjoyed today's video, then please smash that like button. Maybe check out this video on Israeli military inventions. Thanks for watching.